Hi, my name is Tom Leonard. I'm the president of TPI, and it's a pleasure once again to welcome you all here to beautiful Colorado. There are many great recreational activities here, and if you want to talk to me afterwards, I can recommend a few of them to you. The hiking's number one, and I also can recommend the wonderful emergency room here in Aspen. It's really great to see so many returning attendees here, and it's also great to see some newcomers. And I hope that you will find the conference worthwhile. The theme of this conference this year is creative destruction and growth, policy choices. So we've attempted to design an agenda that's going to address the important technology policy issues that are going to affect whether we're going to be able to maintain an environment that is conducive to continued innovation in a variety of areas. And I hope you find that agenda useful and enjoyable. We have a tradition here at TPI, at the TPI Forum, of inviting a prominent member of the Colorado technology community to give welcoming remarks at the opening ceremony. And this year our speaker is Stanton Dodge, and we also have a tradition now, the second year, of inviting our Colorado-based board member, Ray Gifford, to give a fuller introduction. So, Ray.
Thanks, Tom. And on behalf of the 2 or 3 residents of Colorado here, welcome to our state. We're very glad to have you here. It is a great end of summer vacation to the Washington policy establishment, and we hope you keep coming to Aspen. It's my pleasure to introduce a friend of mine and a great Colorado technology leader, Stanton Dodge, to give the opening remarks here tonight. Stanton is not a native Coloradan, but he's edging into that category that he's been there long enough that we'll consider him for honorary status. Stanton is the general counsel of Dish Corporation, Dish EchoStar?
Just Dish.
Pick one? Okay. Dish is one of the most fabulous entrepreneurial stories of recent memory, insofar as it's a Colorado-born corporation that on the back of a rocket with a satellite on it became a major player in U.S. video and eventually someday these days wireless markets. I'll add that I've known Stanton now for probably 5 or 6 years. He is a great aficionado of cycling, and he may be disappearing tomorrow to watch a little bike race here, but we won't begrudge him that. The other advice I gave to Stanton tonight was last year's speaker was our mutual friend here in Colorado, almost honorary Coloradan, Phil Weiser. And I said, Stanton, the only thing you have to do to top Weiser is talk more slowly, which isn't hard for anybody. So with that, I give to you to welcome us to the Creative Destruction TPI conference, the General Counsel of Dish, Stanton Dodge.
Thanks, Ray, and thanks, Tom. And as usual, Ray pretty much stole all my thunder. I think he covered everything, my entire history, Dish, the cycling race, which is all the things I was going to talk about. So, But, first, thanks to the Tech Policy Institute for hosting this event in beautiful Aspen every year. We really appreciate you coming out here, and to everyone who traveled from out of state for this conference, officially, welcome to Colorado. I'm Stanton Dodge, the Executive Vice President and General Counsel of DISH, which is the nation's third largest pay TV provider. And it's truly an honor to deliver the welcoming remarks tonight and to follow in the recent footsteps of our beloved Senator, U.S. Senator Mark Udall, and as Ray noted, Phil Weiser, the Dean of the University of Colorado Law School, who's a very dear friend of mine. By background, I grew up on the North Shore of Boston and came to Colorado about 18 years ago, straight out of law school to come clerk for a judge. And I have to admit that when I came to Colorado, I really thought I would end up as a general practice lawyer in a small town like Aspen, skiing 100 days a year, which is a true passion of mine. But during the course of my clerkship, as I was telling some folks earlier, I used to read the paper every day because I didn't know anyone in Denver, and I found myself really drawn to all the bustling telecommunications activity that was going on in Denver back in the mid-90s. And I was especially intrigued by one article I read one day about a guy named Charlie Ergen, who was planning on launching satellites to provide TV direct to people's homes to compete with cable companies. And ultimately, I was so interested in Charlie's plan that I actually offered to work for him for free. For a period of time, I was kind of desperate. I didn't have a job or anything after my clerkship. And that's a great story if anyone would like to hear it. It's just, that's a speech in and of itself. But that was almost 17 years ago. And I think everyone will agree that we've had a pretty good run at DISH, and that U.S. consumers have benefited immensely from the disruptive and innovative impact that DISH has had on the pay TV industry. Colorado's story and DISH's story, I think, fit very well in the theme of this conference of creative destruction. From the early pioneers in covered wagons to the prospectors, and the birth of a ski industry that boasts some of the best skiing in the world, the economic history of Colorado, and the Rocky Mountain West is a tale of creative destruction in its purest sense. Creative destruction, establishing one form of enterprise which ultimately yields to another as times change, really lives in these mountains. And take, for example, the story of a man, his wife, and their best friend, who, much like the early pioneers, came to Colorado to follow their dreams. Charlie, Candy Ergen, and their friend Jim DeFranco started a business here back in 1980, selling those giant C-band dishes, you may recall, that we used to call prairie flowers, out of the back of a pickup truck. They drove to farms, ranches, and remote areas of Colorado and all our neighboring states and said to folks, don't worry if you can't get over-the-air broadcast channels or cable TV, we've got you covered. They poured the concrete, anchored the dishes in yards and fields, and built a successful business selling those huge, C-band dishes, which at the time I think cost $10,000, $12,000 a piece. But then one day, creative destruction came knocking, and new high-powered satellites were being developed that ultimately would replace those big C-band dishes with cute, small, pizza pan-sized dishes, as we used to say. The consumers could just mount on their roof or on a balcony. And Charlie, Kenny, and Jim at that time, they saw the writing on the wall and knew that if they kept selling those big dishes and kept their head in the sand, pretty quickly they were going to be roadkill on the information superhighway. But rather than accept that fate, they decided to reinvent themselves and take some very, very big risks. They took that business, which at the time I think was about $250 million a year in gross revenue, and bet the whole thing on this small dish business. They raised capital, bought a satellite, launched it, as Ray hinted at, on the nose of a Chinese rocket that at the time was losing 1 of every 2 launches. Sometimes back to back, sometimes either or. But somehow it worked. In 1996, our satellite TV service was launched. And we, at that moment, seized the opportunity to take on the established cable companies using an all-digital platform, which, as I was writing these remarks, that almost seems de rigueur today, but think about it. It was all analog back in those days. We launched a service with all ones and zeros, crystal clear picture. It was really quite extraordinary that Charlie said, forget analog, we're moving to the next technology to get better customer service. Many innovations followed, such as our lease plan, so subscribers didn't have to buy those very expensive set-top boxes. Local and to local service, so that we could effectively compete with the cable guys who had local broadcast channels. Might surprise you to know, at the time, DirecTV didn't think that was important. And it was our CEO, Charlie Ergen, went to the Hill and fought tooth and nail to get that passed because he thought there's no way we will ever be able to effectively compete with the cable guys unless we can offer local and to local service. And then also the DVR, which we had a big lawsuit with TiVo for a number of years, and it always pained me to see that they claimed they invented the DVR. It was us. With Web TV, who is roadkill on the side of the information superhighway, but we were the first guys to actually do that. And all these innovations drove competition in the marketplace, lowering prices, inspiring innovation, as cable operators, DirecTV, and ourselves sought to stay ahead of the creative destruction wave rather than get sucked in by it. And as I said earlier, the American consumer benefited enormously all the way along. But, as happened before, creative destruction is at it again. And we find ourselves today at an inflection point that's going to cause us to once again have to reinvent our entire business. Today, consumer preferences and technology are moving fast, challenging traditional notions of video delivery and the associated business models. Consumers worldwide, as everyone knows, are using mobile wireless devices such as tablets and smartphones to watch video and expect their video what they want, when they want, where they want it. And ourselves and the other folks in the pay TV industry have to innovate to keep pace with those evolving consumer preferences, and there are many challenges ahead. That's why we're developing our own wireless broadband spectrum, and why we're challenging the wireless incumbents with new ideas and pro-competition public policy. Just as in the past, there are doubters today and detractors, and the incumbents want to protect their market share. We, on the other hand, at DISH, choose to embrace creative destruction and competition and choose to evolve our business rather than cling to the ways of the past. That's why we think policymakers should ensure that new entrants to the wireless broadband market have a chance to acquire new licenses and roll out new services. Just as television did not belong to the big cable companies in the mid-90s, wireless broadband should not belong to the incumbents of today. We think the future belongs to those who see things as they can be, not as they are, and that even though it might take time for public policy and business practices to catch up, the creative destruction of the American marketplace always leads to the best results for consumers. While the next chapter is still being written, if past is prologue, I posit that these mountains hold a clue to where we're going, and the road to the future, no doubt, runs through these beautiful Colorado Rockies. Now, speaking of prologue, and as Ray hinted, I encourage you all to experience Aspen while you're here and take in the USA Pro Cycling Challenge after the concurrent breakout sessions, not before or during, although do as I say, not as I do in that regard. And I note for any, that the winner of this year's Tour de France, Chris Froome, is participating in the race, so it's a really big deal. It's a big deal for Aspen, it's a big deal for our state. And on that, enjoy your time in Colorado, and thank you all for coming. And I'll take any questions. Tom has asked if I would, and of course I would. And if you all just want to go to the bar, do that too. But I'll be around.
Okay, I think everybody wants to go to the bar.
Why don't you tell them a little bit about your future emerging? Talk a bit about talk about your future. You don't have to.
Okay, there is a question, okay?
So the Congressman Stearns had the question of, could I talk a bit about DISH's future really as it relates to wireless? And as everyone has seen who follows us, we've spent a ton of time and effort. Charlie, dare I say, he's spending 90% of his time today focused on our wireless strategy. And we're dead serious about getting into the business. And I just met some fine folks from Verizon here, but we want to eat their lunch, and AT&T's as well, and hopefully introduce some real competition into that market. And we acquired a bunch of S-band spectrum several years ago, successfully worked with the FCC to grant us terrestrial rights to that. And we're currently out there trying to find more spectrum because, quite frankly, 40 megahertz won't ultimately do it. Preference is really through partnerships. You probably saw we tried vigorously to work something out with Sprint and Clearwire that ultimately fell apart, and now we're really just looking at other options from other partners and other spectrum acquisition. But you can rest assured we are dead serious about getting into that business.
So just to follow up on that, I mean, do you have any timetable as to when you'll start offering Wireless service?
We were hoping 2015, but given where we find ourselves today, I think that's a bit optimistic. You know, a lot of people asked, you know, oh, gosh, Sprint fell apart. You guys are under the gun. You must feel a ton of pressure. And I have to say, we don't. I mean, we have a build-out schedule, obviously, that we have to comply with, and it's always in the forefront of our mind. But we're trying to be sensible about how we actually go about this. So I'm sure the time will come where we feel some time pressure. But today, we're just trying to work through the various strategic options and see what makes the most sense for us and our shareholders long term.
Good. You talk about creative destruction. Talk about the future of retrans consent. I mean, I feel like you guys have to delve into that. Go for it.
That's a system that should be destroyed now, creatively or not. And I guess on that, I think our stance and viewpoints are pretty well known. It's a system where, you know, back in the old days, it was a semi-fair fight, dare you say. There was one broadcaster, one NBC fighting against a cable company, and it was sort of mutual assured destruction. Each party needed each other so they get to a fair deal. Today you've got one broadcaster representing each network, playing 3 or 4 distributors off each other. It's not a fair fight, and ultimately consumers are the ones in the crosshairs. And these retransmission consent disputes are reaching an unprecedented level. I mean, I think CBS is still down on Time Warner. Raycom was down on our service for about, I think, 7 days. And you know, I think the statistics are in 2010, there were 10 retransmission takedowns. The next year, 50. Last year, there were 100. And that doesn't even take into account the number of these disputes that go right to the wire, where the broadcasters are telling their subscribers to change to our competitors, ultimately only to have the dispute resolved. And I'd also add, sometimes it's not even one broadcaster in a market playing 3 or 4 distributors off against each other. They've also entered into these joint negotiating agreements where I believe it was in Wyoming, 3 out of the big 4 had one person negotiating for them, and we had to take them all down at the same time. So, you know, we're supportive of some type of solution that levels the playing field a bit. You know, we just want a fair deal, and we want consumers out of the crosshairs. And we've suggested a number of things, none of which have ever been acceptable to the broadcasters. And today, our current solution is pretty simple. Allow us to import a distant network signal when these signals are down. It's not a perfect solution, such that we still have an incentive to continue to negotiate with the local broadcaster to get the local news back up. But at least during those periods, the consumers will be able to get their must-have programming from the broadcasters.
John Malone. John Malone is about 27% of Charter, and Charter's trying to take over Time Warner Cable. Glenn Britt is retiring in December. Can you handicap for us whether Charlie would sell out to DirecTV if we do get a period of horizontal consolidation across distributors?
I think what... Sure. So it was something along the lines of Malone, you know, has recently acquired, you know, X% of Charter, and there's speculation out there that he's going to go after Time Warner. And would that change our view towards some type of combination with DirecTV? And I'd really, you know, defer. Charlie's spoken a lot about it on our earnings calls, but we think there are a ton of synergies between us and DirecTV. There's no doubt about it, and industry consolidation is on its way. So, you know, it's something we would definitely take a look at. Whether that would spur us to do it any quicker, I don't really think so. I think it's an interesting play for John Malone, and we're watching that. He's actually our neighbor across E470, so if he can pull it off, we'd be pretty proud of him.
Well, thank you.
Of course. Thank you.